let me introduce and welcome here Barry Katz. We pass from, hi Barry, we pass from Russia and Finland to Palo Alto and California. And Barry is professor at the college, California College of Arts and Stanford University. Barry is an expert on design history, and a special expert from a personal point on that kind of design that you have in Silicon Valley and the history of what happened on that strange part of the world.
Yes.
But there is another point that is very interesting, because if you go in the IDEO website, they mentioned that Barry was the first IDEO fellow. At the same time, they mentioned something very, well, I'm a bit, I'll say, I invite you for that. They say that you are an aggressive networker. And this is something that was not. So, well, I don't perceive you as an aggressive, but networker, it's a very good topic. And so that means that you are in the right place, because with this big event, we are trying to not re-establish, but highlight the power of the networking for the worldwide design community.
Yeah.
So welcome in the right place as a networker. And I would ask you, I have a question, of course. I would ask you, from your perception of the designer, and especially in your context of the Silicon Valley and the California, your experience, your perception about the phase of the lockdown, the reaction about the lockdown. I remember that in our email, you quote something from Decameron as well in the beginning of the lockdown.
Sorry, who did I quote?
The Decameron. Decameron. The
yes, yeah. You're Decameron. Yes. I do have a few thoughts on it. First, I have to say, Alessandro, it's wonderful to see you, but I'm just, I feel like you and your colleagues have done just such a beautiful thing in putting this all together. The 24-hour design conversation, it's not simply an expression of our current situation. It's, we're not simply talking about it, we're living it. So we are not imagining what the future would be. We are actually experiencing that future. And it's in the course of this global conversation. And I think that's really pretty remarkable. If you think about it, if this crisis had hit 10 years ago, everything would have been frozen. We didn't have the tools. I mean, we complain every day about Zoom and the problems of Miro and the anxieties around email and all of that. But 10 years ago, the tools that we are now using really didn't exist. And if this had happened then, everything would have simply been frozen. So it's actually a kind of a remarkable moment. So yes, the Decameron, I wrote to you at the very beginning of the crisis that I had this strange feeling of resonance with this group of Italian nobles who retreated to a hillside villa overlooking Florence to wait out the plague 700 years ago. And we're doing a little bit of that. We call it sheltering in place, although some of my friends have started calling it sheltering in privilege, which is a bit more accurate. So here, for the benefit of people who are listening, is my appraisal of the situation in Silicon Valley. It's maybe best expressed in a simple formula. I have never in my life felt more isolated and more globally connected at the same moment. And it's just really, really weird. So I've barely been out of my house for 3 months. And at the same time, I am in conversation with my friends in Milano and in Tel Aviv and in South Africa and China. It's almost on a daily basis. And this unevenness of the personal experience is really, I'm getting used to it. But it's pretty extraordinary. I've been thinking, I'm finally beginning to understand the genius of the surrealists with their melted clocks, their frozen time, de Chirico's deserted town squares, Lautréamont's chance meeting of, what was it, an umbrella and a sewing machine on an operating table, these weird juxtapositions. So I look outside and, you know, the birds are singing and the sky is blue. The streets are clear. There's no traffic. The pace of life is quiet. And at the same time, about 1,000 Americans are dying every day from this disease, and about 40 million are unemployed. So these conflicting surrealist juxtapositions are really what it's all about. I remember, Alessandro, last time we spoke in person, I was wondering whether we Americans had were being led by a Berlusconi or a Mussolini, and it feels like a little bit of both. Okay, so that's the general situation here.
Well, you touched some point like the question of shelter and privilege that, as you mentioned, is something that. Well, we have a crisis from the healthcare to the economy, but it's as it happened just once in the last centuries. We were not ready for that, and so we, as you say, we are getting used to something extraordinary.
Yes,
that's incredible because it's something extraordinary. We should be surprised, but we are slowly, especially with this extraordinary situation, help us probably to get used to something extraordinary like what we are doing now. That was not extraordinary. 20 years ago was just something just impossible. That is more than extraordinary, let's say.
I think this is exactly correct. I mean, I'm not going to throw numbers around because I didn't memorize any, but there are reports that there has been a 19% reduction in greenhouse gases globally since this started. So we're getting used to a world that's a little bit quieter, a little bit cleaner, a little bit slower. Americans spend about 48 hours per year sitting in traffic, not moving. I mean, literally not moving. You know, do we really want to go back? I mean, we complain about Zoom meetings, but do we really want to go back to spending that much of our time moving back and forth between home and work?
It's incredible.
I have a student who comes from Wuhan, and she told me that they have seen, her parents reported they have seen fish swimming in the Yangtze, which has been so polluted. They've never seen fish before.
Most polluted,
we really want to go back to that. So I think this idea that we're getting used to something, some of what we're getting used to is it's pretty exciting.
And also the you know that in the previous conversation, and in any case it relates with this topic, a lot of time came the question of the commuting time. So according to the quality of life, the question of mobility, commuting, as you mentioned. So I think that during this time, we just note, we knew also before, but we just note that before we did spend hours and hours in a crazy way just to go from here to there to do something that you can do in a different way. And the air and the quality of air, the quality of light change a lot. So probably we can have some advantage for the situation, avoiding the bad part, of course.
That is the hope.
I'm curious about the topic you propose, because the topic you propose is object.
Yes.
Please tell us why.
Okay, well, first, I thought it was a wonderful prompt asking each of us around the world to think of a word that we could use to discipline our thinking about the world after lockdown. And, you know, in a way, what you and I have been talking about is we're already living that world in a conversation like this, and we should be aware of that. So I thought about it, and I came up with the word object in English. And I know people may be listening from many, many different language universes. So although English has colonized the world, I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail. Object in English, interestingly, like the word design, is both a noun and a verb. And that's what really kind of struck me as being so interesting. As a noun, which we would pronounce object, emphasis on the first syllable, we're referring to things, the physical things or the digital things or the environmental things that designers make and use. So I can say, there are many objects in my house. You can see a lot of them in my study, in my office, on my screen. In Italian, ci sono molti oggetti nella mia casa, nel mio ufficio, e sul mio schermo. So object in that sense. But this we can't do in Italian. Object in English is also a verb. I object. And what that means in English, it is an act of protest and defiance. And what you'd say in Italian, I think, is mi oppongo allo status quo. I am opposed to something. Yeah. But yes, exactly. But in English, it's the same word. The things that designers create and are objects, but my response to that world is defiance. I object to it. So that seemed really interesting to me because, as I said, the word design also has this curious meaning. And I'm trying to find out whether it's the case also in the multiple other languages that I encounter in my classrooms. So I'm looking into this, but design in English, it's both a noun and a verb. So I can ask Alessandro, could you please design a chair for me, or a house, or an urban plan, or an interface, or a website? And then Alessandro, you will do it, and then you will hand it to me and say, Barry, do you like my design? So we've gone from a verb to a noun. And I've always found that a really inspiring concept. One of the things that I tell people when I give talks about design thinking, which is so fashionable now, is forget all of the diagrams and the hexagons and the 5 stages of design thinking. It's really just one principle, and that is stop thinking about nouns. How will I build a better thing? And start thinking about verbs. What would be a better way to achieve the objective that I want? And that raises that lifts the lid off the box that we are living in and moves us from thinking about one solution to there's an infinite number of possibilities. So the parallel worlds of object and object and design struck me as just a really interesting opportunity. Now, design in the age of COVID-19, it's like it's an uneasy bridge between the world of objects and in which we are all living, and the organization of that world, which is what I object to. I object to the violence. I object to the uneven and unequal distribution of resources, social and material resources. I object to the world in which there has been a collapse of trust between people and institutions, between people and governments. And I guess the bottom line for me, Alessandro, is everybody is talking about how we can return to life before the coronavirus struck. But in a way, that would be returning to the situation that got us into this mess in the first place. So I'm not sure that we want to do that. I think we want to preserve this tension between the objects of design and the things which we value in a positive way, and the things to which we object in a negative and a critical way. So that's the big thought that I have. Do you want to follow up, or shall I just keep meditating?
I mean, it's a. I never thought about the relation between the verb and the noun, and how taking the, let's see, the verb contain more sense of responsibility in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And is it true that sometimes we lose a lot of talking about the meaning of design, because also it's not easy to translate the term design.
Yes.
When you want to translate in Italian, it's not exactly the same. And probably design is also one of the most abused terms in the last decade.
Oh yeah.
What do you think about it?
Well, I was at a meeting, and I don't know if I should say this too out loud. It was with one of our clients at IDEO, and a charming man, and he was from a financial services industry, and he said, "I'm so happy to be here. I love design." And I smiled at him, and I said something polite, but I was thinking, I don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about. I don't know what you just said. I love design. Does that mean he likes the chair that he's sitting on? Does that mean he likes to be around creative people? Does that mean he is imagining it to produce? I had no idea what he meant.
That's the point. That's the point. From at the same time, this is let's see, it's powerful, because design in terms of education is one of the most trendy education career in education worldwide.
Yes.
So the School of Design are blooming worldwide, really everywhere. Hundreds School of Design are emerging every years, probably worldwide. So that's important for the discipline, because there is a fresh energy from one side, but there's the dark side that probably is that it's quite saturated. It's quite it's like it loses a bit of meaning.
Yes,
I think that it would be very important to use this energy, this big energy about the design, about project, about taking care of needs of the people and so on, to refresh the meaning of design that is not just related with product.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the opportunity of the moment. And, it's an opportunity for design educators like us, but it's an opportunity in a larger sense as well. If we could go back for a moment to the COVID crisis and, our imagining of the world after the lockdown, which is our main theme, I would suggest this. It's been a tragedy and a catastrophe and a crisis in every sense. It's a medical crisis, a political crisis, a moral crisis.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, a crisis of trust. I mean, I see my neighbor walking toward me in the street, and I don't know if he's infected with a disease, and, pull on my mask. It's crazy. But the word, and if I can be a linguist again for a moment, the word crisis, it's actually a medical term. We talk about a critical illness. And what a crisis is in medicine, it's the point, the inflection point, when a patient either recovers or dies. So it's that critical moment. And I think that what has happened is we are in an inflection point right now. We are experiencing, tell me if you disagree with this, I'd really like to know. We are experiencing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change course. And we have the choice now of going back to pre-COVID, pre-lockdown or post-lockdown conditions, which is like going back into the factory that made you sick in the first place.
Yes.
or seizing an opportunity. It will be traumatic. I mean, I am not such a romantic that I'm pretending that this will be easy, but seizing an opportunity. We're in the Titanic, there's an iceberg in front of us. Do we want to go full speed ahead, start the engines over again, or do we want to change course before it's too late?
No, it's in a conversation was emerging something that was interesting because say the same thing about the role of crisis in nature, and what you mentioned remind me, let's see, in a more everyday life experience, the role of fever. When you have fever, it's because your body reacts to something, and so you should leave that the fever do what is the right reaction.
Yeah.
It's not. I have a not clear idea, but I think that
what you don't want to do in a fever is take a lot of painkillers and pretend that there's no problem.
That's the point.
Just live with it, yeah.
Because the situation is that we have something like some problem. We had some problem. We had the global warming. We had the quality of air of any city that was a very big problem. Then we get some other kind of problem that put us in a situation that was, from a certain point of view, unusual and very extraordinary, as we said. But at the same time, we discovered that there is something good, like, and I think that one of the, well, probably the new balance should be a balance between the quality of our life and some economical commitments that we have worldwide.
Sure.
And design play a role, probably.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you said that. One of the slogans that I hear every day in the media from our elected officials, and it's very nice, but the slogan is, we're all in this together. Everybody has to cooperate, wear a face mask or shelter in place. I hate that. It drives me crazy because we are not in this together. We are in this very, very differently. So my commute has just shrunk from about 35 miles to 16 feet. Okay, from my bedroom to my study, sometimes stopping in the kitchen, sometimes stopping in the bathroom. That's really nice. So I can work from home pretty easily, but it's hard to work from home if you don't have a job and you don't have a home. If you are living in a slum in Mumbai and you don't have an opportunity to keep 6 feet of space, 2 meters of space between you and your neighbors. If you can't afford to have Jeff Bezos deliver your meals to you through FedEx or one of Amazon's services. If we have medically very different measures of the impact of this virus on different communities. So there is a largely Hispanic neighborhood in San Jose near where I live, which has got something like 10 times the infection rate of neighboring districts, because these are people who are driving buses, they are taking care of children, they are on the front lines of being exposed. And quite honestly, we are not in this together. We are in this in a very, very different levels. So I think, at some level, my biggest thought on all of this is the virus has put a magnifying lens on everything, on personal issues, on political issues, on social issues, and it's just magnified. It's like looking at your face under high magnification. You don't always like what you see, but it's still there.
All right. You say something that clarify some of my thought during the lockdown, because I was thinking that even in a personal, about personal issues, some deep characteristic of each person came out more clear during the lockdown. And it's what you say, it's like a lens. So excluding what was a bit decoration, you focus on the essence probably. And and the lens was very, so the virus has been a very good lens for the virus, the emergency of the pandemic. But
because you can't ignore it.
And but at the same time, I think that well, I have a question in the last minute, and I want to share it with you. In the last, we were not ready worldwide. We were not ready to this emergency. So anyone, any country, any person, any individual person, any country, any continent, any government did something wrong, something right. We just went a bit day by day to adjust to the situation. Somebody went before, some later, but that. Do you think that if something similar will happen in 6 months, we will be more ready? So that means will be easier or not?
Oh boy, shall I give you an optimistic answer, or shall I tell you the truth?
Both is not possible. Both are possible.
There are some things I actually am very optimistic about. I mean, I've never seen such a blaze of design activity and design discourse in my life. I mean, things like this 24-hour conversation. I've never seen anything like this before. So that's filling me with hope and optimism. I have been pointing out to a lot of people who don't know their history very well, the Spanish flu, 1918, well, we know it came in 2 waves. And the first wave, it was, many political leaders said it's the seasonal flu. Sound familiar? And with people's defenses down, the resistance compromised, when the second wave hit, it killed between 50 and 100 million people, depending on who you read and how you count and such. And it's hard to see that we have really, speaking here of the United States, it's hard to see that we have really adapted fundamental cultural norms and values to prepare ourselves for the likelihood of a next wave. So what we're really suffering from here is, we have a culture of radical individualism. Nobody tells me what to do. It's a personal choice whether I wear a mask, whether I stay at home. And balancing that with the social good is proving to be just an incredibly problematic thing in the US. So honestly, I don't feel that we are, I mean, we've got some of our medical facilities are in better shape. Supply chains are in better shape. We're learning all kinds of things about how to work remotely. And in that sense, we're in better shape. But I do fear that if a serious second wave hits, much worse than what we've got now, we will not be able to handle that. Gosh, I'm sorry to end on such a note.
To close with well, I from a certain point, I hope you are wrong at the moment.
I hope so too. I always hope I'm right. This time I hope I'm wrong.
We hope you are wrong. Thank you, Barry, for taking part of our 24 hours. And our time is at the end. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the good input. Thank you for sharing ideas and reflection.
Alessandro,
to see you.
I always love talking to you. Ciao.
Ciao, Barry. Thank you.